Hi everyone, welcome. I'm down here in my wormery and I've got some food set up here for getting one of my worm bins fed. It's a variety of different orange things. Some of these things are like pumpkin, chunked up pieces of pumpkin. This is all carrot peels. There's even a little piece of orange peel, just because it matches. So the bin that I plan to feed today is over on the shelf. It's the African night crawlers that I received from Northeast Worms. That's the reason I keep their sticker on there, to show me that that's that particular population of African night crawlers. This bin's been running for 163 days now, and as we populated it, we actually did count all the worms that we were putting in there. I think it was just at the end that we came up with a rough estimate, but for a while we had a very specific and accurate count of how many worms occupied this system, and it would seem that we're down by one at this point. Not sure how that little guy ended up out there. It could have been that he was stuck to this plastic that we removed last time we were in here 9 days ago to feed. We decided we're going to remove the plastic, let the system start drying out a little bit by being covered only with these 2 sheets of paper. Underneath this paper bag material there's a sheet of newspaper. So hopefully this stuff has dried out a bit. It was very wet. It's funny, when I reviewed the video from last time we were in here to check on it, I kept repeating over and over how wet I thought the system was. The system actually was set into foraging, so I had taken it out of composting mode and started foraging, and then I decided, you know what, let's get back into feeding this thing. So this is already maybe the second or third, maybe fourth feeding since we got this thing back into active composting service. And today, after 17 feedings, it's going to receive its 18th. So let's get the thing up on the bench and get to work. I don't know, I don't see a track on how this little guy got here, so I guess that whole idea of him dropping off the plastic is realistic. Although, now that I come to think of it, I thought that I did actually make sure that that plastic was pretty much free of anything being stuck to it. So I don't know. Doesn't matter how he got there. It's just regrettable that he ended up there. So now we did find that this stuff was really kind of muddy. It was kind of weird that I just went on and on about it last time. So we did kind of acknowledge ahead of time that the material would start to dry on the surface, but it's not really very dry at all. It's actually still pretty damp. I figured those 2 sheets of paper would allow for a great deal of moisture to evaporate, but then again, I mean, if the material is still trying to shed its moisture from the lower reaches, then is that one big long worm? Yeah. I thought it was 2 worms, just one long worm. So I imagine, you know, the material on top has to remain damp because the moisture coming past it from the lower portions of the bin would ultimately have to pass through and moisten the top levels. But yeah, this stuff is still so wet. I'm almost wondering if we should like go so far as to remove yet another layer of material. Maybe leave just the newspaper on top, riddled with little holes to allow for even more moisture to escape. And maybe we would just come back in here a little bit sooner just to make sure nothing's going out of control. But yeah, this stuff, it's none of it is smooth enough or flowing enough or crumbly enough to even be close enough to the state where it could be sifted or screened or anything like that. I guess the other thing we can sort of do is help it along by sort of tilling it up to aerate it a little bit. I guess the moisture will, you know, ultimately help with the ongoing breakdown of all the material that's still in this stuff that needs to be broken down. We'll treat the upper top surface as sort of a sacrificial component of the system, which will get a little bit drier over time and perhaps see a little bit less worm traffic, but I think it'll be to the benefit of the lower levels. So we did go through this bin last time, and we did our best to collect up all the different large items. So they should all be pretty much centralized down the center of the bin. So let's not allow ourselves to scatter it. If there is a bunch of stuff down the middle, then let's collect it all up and set it aside before we do a thorough tilling, and then we can have it all right there. We don't have to go hunting for it. There were things like this banana stem, pretty good size object, still needs a little work, but I do remember a whole bunch of additional smaller sized ones getting dropped in on top of it. And they were pretty far gone, so most of them already started to look like this. Quite a difference, right? And then we had large chunks of cardboard leftovers. Looks like there's even maybe coffee stuck to that. The food that they got last time was something that I anticipated would be gone the next time we got in here, which was just a bunch of lettuce that had been frozen and thawed, so that it probably got gobbled up within a day or two. But there was also the butt end of the head of lettuce. This is a stick. This is not going to go anywhere. And I imagine that even after a week or 10 days, and we're now 9 days since that feeding, I did imagine that there might still be a little bit of leftover of that remaining. But I could have been mistaken. Here's another banana stem. So once again, I am trying to sort of excavate here while at the same time finding the and removing and sort of separating all these little leftover bits of old past feedings. Stuff like this mango seed. This is the one that's furthest along. This is an example of one that's not even I don't know, it's not even that pliable yet that I can open up the entire clamshell shape, so it's still pretty tough. I could see things like those slow composting items at some point just sort of going with the worms to their new habitat. I'm sure they won't be able to break these sort of things down in the amount of time that we will probably want to bring the system to a close and harvest the castings out of here. What is this? It's like a big jumble of cardboard. So these were all the things that we figured we'd try to keep close to the new feeding. So when we put the lettuce in last time, it was placed right on top of all those things. So those things went in first. The fresh feeding went right in on top. And it's not too surprising that I'm not seeing any leftovers of that lettuce. I just thought I might see that little stem, but I don't see any sign of it. And it was placed right in the middle. So I've come in at the middle from both directions and for the most part found all the stuff that was in there. Here and there I'm still finding a chunk of cardboard or something like that. But it looks to me like they did actually do away with all that lettuce, including the stem that they got last time. Huh, that's good. Alright, so I don't think we have much more food or leftovers remaining in this stuff over here. I think I've pretty thoroughly picked it all out. This might actually be a chunk of mango seed shell, husk, whatever it's called. Just wish I can help this moisture along a little bit more quickly, but I don't want to, you know, kind of force a priority or a time scale on this process. I do have this feeling that allowing it to dry slowly will allow it to get much nicer. I don't know why. It just seems to me if the stuff were to like be put in a dehydration system or something and it just suddenly dried out, you know, maybe it was left uncovered in an air-conditioned space or in a space where the air is extremely dry, this stuff would just, I don't know, harden up, I believe, and it would become nasty. So I think there's a benefit to allowing the drying to occur gradually. And there's just so much stuff in this material, you know. I don't know if it just looks this way because it's damp and it's clumpy, but I just have this kind of weird feeling like there's still lots and lots of stuff in this that needs to be broken down besides leftover food and bedding scraps. But it's just impossible to see because it's all, you know, so wet and clumpy that it all kind of starts to take on this weird appearance. It might just be deceiving, I don't know, I can't tell. Hopefully if it starts to sort of flow a little bit better, we'll find that it doesn't really have as many scraps of leftover junk in it as I thought. is nice. Just kind of settles, you know. After 9 days of being trafficked by worms, the stuff just settles, you know. I mean, I did the same thing 9 days ago when we were in here last, airing it out, kind of trying to declump it, aerate it a little bit, possibly bring some of the more damp stuff on the bottom up to the surface and vice versa. It's sort of just sort of settles, you know, and it becomes a little bit tough again. I don't know. To me, maybe just it's us from a human perspective see it as something that we would have a hard time burrowing through. But I got a feeling that the worms have no trouble at all. Moving through this stuff, even when it's kind of damp and sticky and gooey like this. Naturally, if it was a lot drier and a lot more crumbly, I think it would be much easier for them to move through it. But then it might not break down quite as rapidly if it were drier. So there is kind of that balance point too, right? If we let it dry too much, then it's just going to sit there and it's not going to break down. So I think right now we're in pretty good shape. I am tempted to, though. I am tempted to reduce the coverings by one, because the stuff I wanted to put in here is going to bring with it a good amount of moisture. And I do think that a little bit of drying would benefit this system. So perhaps we will just cover up with only that sheet of torn newspaper with the holes in it. But we're going to make sure that we sink these food items really down all the way to the bottom, I believe, so that we're very thoroughly covered. Since we're only going to be covered with just a sheet of newspaper, I don't want there to be delicious chunks of carrot and pumpkin sitting out on the surface of this stuff where it would attract any sort of insects or pests or whatever. I want all the fresh foods down deep. So unlike last time when we placed all the old stuff at the bottom and then piled the new foods on top, I'm thinking maybe we reverse it. No, you know, let's stick to putting all the old worked stuff down low and putting the freshly added stuff up high. So all this stuff that we picked out in the beginning has probably been depopulated anyway, so it's probably safe to put stuff on it. This is glue. I recognize it. It's the glue that holds cardboard together, because I do remember actually looking to remove bits of that when we saw it in the past, but I don't think I got all of it, and that's evidence of it. So I don't know, let's grab all these old things and kind of use them as a foundation for this feeding. At least we'll know where to find it all when we come back in here the next time. I think we've got it all. I might have covered some of it up in the process. So yeah, this is going to be a good bit of stuff going in as well. I took it out a little while ago to see if it'll thaw, but it's kind of in a big chunk, so it'll thaw down here within the worm bin. Yeah, this stuff is definitely going to kick out a good bit of moisture as it thaws out. Perhaps the carrots not so much, but the pumpkin for sure. Now this thing, I don't know. I think it might have been frozen, thawed out a little bit, and then got frozen again. So made it into a little bit of a dense. No, it's still pretty crumbly. Luckily, it's not just a big chunk. I was hoping that I'd be able to chip it apart and flake it in here thoroughly so that it didn't go in as just a big wad. Yeah, this is going to be a heck of a feeding. They're going to love this stuff, man. Oh, this is like two of their favorites. So even though we're probably laying in about a half an inch or an inch of material here, I got a feeling next time we come in here that's going to just be collapsed and gone. Here again, I think we predicted last time when we were in here 9 days ago that lettuce would be gone in 7 to 10 days. And here 9 days later, our prediction came true. That stuff was totally consumed. So I think that's going to be the same thing with this stuff here. Alright, well, regrettably we need to use some of this worm-occupied material to cover up with, but we'll see if we could use some of this stuff that's right out here on the surface, which the worms have evacuated already because of the disruption and because of the bright lights. And if some of them can sense the cold of all that food, then they can bug out and leave it if they don't like it. These are tropical worms. These African night crawlers, I think, do favor warmer temperatures, so I'm sure they're not keen on all that cold going in there. And I thought about adding a little bit of grit, a little bit of this pulverized eggshell, but I totally forgot, and at this point I think it's too late. So we'll just chalk that up to one of my goofs of forgetting stuff like I always do. So, as we usually do, we're going to cover up the feeding zone with this coffee filter, showing us where we last fed, right down the middle as we usually do. And rather than coming back with both coverings at this point, we're going to come back with only this one. And this is going to actually let out a good amount of air. A lot of moist air underneath it, ventilating, probably allowing this stuff to dry a little bit better. Here we've got sort of double layer on these folded over areas, so these strips over here will probably get a little bit more protection, but down the middle I would imagine we're going to see a little bit better drying, a little bit less coverage out on the edges too. So I got a feeling we could probably come back in here in another 7 to 10 days like we did this time and see how things are progressing. But for now I believe we're done here. All I've got left to do is clean up and put away, but I'm not going to waste your time with that. That's boring. Before I go, let me just really quickly say thank you. Thank you so much for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, please remember to leave me a quick thumbs up before you go. That's always very much appreciated. And if you haven't done so already, please also consider subscribing to the channel too. Oh yeah, memberships are now on too. If you want to join and become a member, a supporting member, it's just a small monthly extra amount to tack on. And, if you're into it, then it's there. So please join. All right, everyone. Thanks so much for watching. Have a great day. Bye now.